There's much more coming up on BIASHARA Tuesday. My table is littered with the dailies this morning. The Daily Nation specifically is what we are taking a look at. The headlines and more important stories that are touching on the direction of the economy. Blocked. That's all the Daily Nation has as the headline on the front of the Daily Nation, and we'll be taking a look at it with Jesse Kimotho and other issues. The state of the nation. What is the direction we're heading towards, given that there's a budget for the 2023-2024 financial year, but there's no Finance Act which finances that budget. High Court has already extended that freezing order on the implementation of the Finance Act, and it's now been transmitted to the Supreme Court for deliberation by a three-judge or not less than a three-judge bench, and that is going to be chaired by the Chief Justice, Martha Koome. Let me take a break and bring back Jesse Kimotho. Don't go far. Welcome to our newspaper review segment. We're bringing you the latest headlines and as well analyzing the most significant news stories of the day. We're focusing today on the recent High Court ruling that declined to lift the conservatory orders on the finance bill or the Finance Act of 2023, given that President William Ruto already signed it. This ruling has very significant impact on impacts and implications on the implementation of that act, and is now raising substantial constitutional issues, which we are taking a look at with Jesse Kimotho, and much more actually that is happening in the dailies. But let me introduce him, and then we can get into the meat of this conversation. Jesse, welcome back.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, KUTV.
Well, how have you been?
I have been well. I've enjoyed, viewing the show. Viewing yesterday, I watched Current Blessing show.
Yeah.
Art and Culture Monday. They had deeper connection. I really enjoyed the music.
Yeah.
It was a lovely experience, and I'm glad to be back.
Right. I watched the show as well. Deeper Connection are an amazing band, and I'm hoping we have as well a deeper connection. Yeah. I had to throw that pun in there. But welcome back again. Always lovely to have you here. Mm-hmm. What is your general feel of the state of the nation? Before now we can see what the headlines have preferred to be the headlines.
Sure. I think right now it is a very exciting time for politics in Kenya. It's actually, the time when, things are moving. We are seeing a lot of change. So if there's a time to really want to be involved in politics, it is now. To be there and, to kind of, this time will come up, publicly participate and offer your voice. Yes.
Public participation has actually been such a common word recently. Do you feel like maybe Kenyans are waking up to the idea of their role in democracy, or is it the failure of government that has led that?
I think it's a bit of both. Kenyans are really feeling the crunch, so that even your support for preference for one leader or the other has now been turned because and again, one term that we will introduce is clientelism, which is the idea that because you are offered a favor, or because you are you receive benefits from your leader, you offer your support to them. So that clientelistic bond between the politician and the citizen that they are serving has been weakened or strengthened.
All right, I see. Let's get into the dailies then, and then we get to more of those terms and see how they apply to the context of the stories. The Daily Nation at the front of the pages. You can let me just maybe begin at the top before I get to the headline. At the top there's a very interesting story, Jesse, that will be there on page 2, on how a mobile phone gave away a suspect in a murder case that happened over in the coastal region. Someone who sent texts here and there, and eventually authorities were able to nab him at an entertainment joint while he was sipping beer, oblivious of what was happening to him. There on page 8 we'll get a story on the Iranian president, who is also called Raisi. That's his actual name. So Raisi wa Iran is doing a 3-day tour in Kenya, and you can read much more of it before we get into that story on page 8. Bilateral ties between Kenya and Iran that will be facilitating trade, a movement of goods and services between both countries that's going to be favorable. On the back page, the IMF board is going to meet Kenya is going to meet to decide on Kenya's new 57 billion loan, which is supposed to be availed once, of course, this is convened, or of course that the IMF board gets to make the decision. On the headline, the priority story is blocked, and there we see the face of the President William Ruto, who's currently not in the country, but President Ruto has suffered another blow yesterday after the High Court declined to lift orders suspending the implementation of the Finance Act 2023, instead asking the Chief Justice to constitute a bench to hear the weighty taxation matters. This comes as a reprieve to Kenyans hit hard by the high cost of living and for whom higher taxes will translate into worsening an already bad situation. A story that is there on page 7. At the bottom of the Daily Nation, smiling faces of Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga, and here is flanked by Kenyans in this matatu which is plying the Ngong Road route. I think, Jesse, you are from that side of town, yeah? Maybe you were in this matatu or not, you will tell us a bit later. But here, Mr. Raila Odinga is quoted saying that we are peaceful citizens who respect the rule of law. We will exercise our democratic right peacefully and in an organized manner on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. Also part of his bid to raise 10 million, the number of signatures that he feels 10 to 15 actually. Yesterday he said 15, last week on Friday he said 10, so 10 to 15 million signatures towards the motion of impeachment of the President of the Republic. Some of those issues that Raila Odinga is prioritizing, 3 of them: high cost of living, the IEBC, and then the server, which never misses in his addresses. Jesse, I don't know where we can begin, but I think the headline takes it. Blocked. Yeah?
Yeah.
Who is blocked here, and who is this who can no longer reply to this message?
So currently, what is happening is the court, the High Court, led by Justice Mugure Tunde, has declared it, have temporarily blocked the implementation of the Finance Act, and that Ruto was essentially probably going to use to raise money for his government, rather to increase the revenue that they would obtain, mainly through taxes.
Okay.
Yes, and the other, the kind of point being underneath that is the secondary ruling that the EPRA, which is the board that regulates the more or less the price of fuel, was unconstitutional in its raising of the fuel prices here in Kenya.
Right, and that is that's a story you can get to look at in the Daily Nation, page 7. But now, Jesse, when we analyze the details of this particular ruling, there is unconstitutionalism, which is being pointed out by the Senator Busia County. Public participation, which we highlighted earlier, was an issue of concern. 90% actually of Kenyans who were surveyed voted that the finance bill of 2023 was not favorable to them. But it seems that this was not put into consideration, a matter which is also there pointed out by the Senator of Busia County. On its other end, the government is declaring shutdown, saying that if they don't get to implement this as soon as possible, actually the Attorney General pointing out that there's need for a temporary lift of the suspension for at least maybe 10 days, so the government can get to run its day-to-day business, the access to the consolidated fund, repayment of debts, and running of normal constitutional government business. When you take a look at these two scenarios, we're presented with a government that is crying and saying, we need money. We need to raise more money to do operations that are going to run things provided by the Constitution. But on the other end, we have a petition that says the government is being unconstitutional with the implementation of this Finance Act. In what kind of position do you think CJ Martha Koome will find herself in once this is landing on her table?
Sure. So that's a very good question. I think we told what is on our minds, but then it is important whenever you look at the judiciary to understand one thing, that nothing else is above the law. So and what does the law say? And we've seen the judiciary, especially at these very high levels, consistently in the past be very keen on following and making, rulings that are based on the law. That's why we had very iconic rulings in the past, especially if you look at, the 2016 election of Uhuru. Now, coming to this, the Busia Senator Omtata, it says on page 7, this is his main argument, is that it is mandatory, number one, for the bill to be introduced for consideration in the originating house. But for that to happen, they must first concur with the Speaker of the other house, and that was not done. So the constitutional process at that specific point, was not followed. There are like 5 other petitioners in the case, and as well as this case, as the case being backed by other, petitions filed by, it says here, the Trade Union Congress of Kenya, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, the Law Society of Kenya. So there are a lot of legal entities and paralegal entities that are backing this move, and they are doing so on very many counts. This is just one but of the many places we've seen. Public participation has also been the other point that was noted. You said last week on BIASHARA Tuesday that this was the fastest act.
The fastest bill that has been sent to law. Yes.
Yeah, apart from the one that Ruto did the day he got elected.
Oh yeah, sure. Sure.
But this is the second fastest one.
Or the fastest finance bill.
Yeah. The fastest finance bill. And you see, it is like that for a reason, and that is what these guys are decrying. On the other hand, Professor Ndungu and the government official lawyer, the Attorney General, Justice Muturi, are stating,
the government's official lawyer, right?
are stating that they, they're stating pains on different levels. They're stating that so many guys, or so many of their entities, such as the EPRA, are going to be in a lot of legal trouble, because you can imagine the lawsuits that are following this that will be filed. People will go say, you charge us money, it was unconstitutional, give us back our money. Yeah?
Right. It's actually here on page 7 that you can get to see that by the time of going to press, the court, it was not yet clear how the court is going to handle the application to cite EPRA Managing Director Daniel Kimotho for contempt, even after the agency adjusted fuel prices upwards, despite being served with a court order. And this is still in effect up to today, despite the second ruling that happened yesterday. This is, a conundrum that we find ourselves in. And the Constitution, I think we are now scrutinizing the Constitution a bit more than we have been before. What will be your speculation? Of course, you said there could be other lawsuits as well following that. And this is pending, of course, what CJ Koome decides. She could as well decide and say, the Finance Act is lawful. And that's why we are here waiting to see what the CJ says. But in case it goes the other way around, do you feel like we are going to see another process where maybe EPRA is unconstitutional and we're having a constitutional crisis on how to decide on some sections? Because one of the things that High Court Judge Mugure Thande said was that lifting that ban for maybe at least 10 days will not be constitutional, since maybe some parts will be implemented and it will be a bit difficult to get to decide after the lifting of this ban on where we lie as with the Constitution. That kind of crisis, how do you feel that we will navigate as a nation?
Sure, Richard. So I would invite us to turn back to fact. Again, when it's discussing matters of law, it's very important to be objective and to just really try and understand the due process. So in the last 2 paragraphs here in the Daily Nation, we see the take that Professor Ndungu has, because he argues that petitioners have failed to prove that the Finance Act was not subject to participation, and he lists his reasons. He goes ahead and says, the the bill that was subjected to public participation as admitted by the petitioners in the amended petition, paragraph 64B, the petitioner clearly said there was a call for stakeholders and general members of the public to come up and participate, and they received a total of 1,080 memoranda with the comments on the bill.
1,008 is actually 10 so you're correct.
Yeah. But then again, as you've said, and we've seen, in the last hour on the news panel, that the government is also being held to account by, for example, teachers. The TSC, teachers have given, for example, the TSC an ultimatum of 14 days to increase their salaries or else. So there is a lot of pressure on both sides, and I think the court in the past, again, I will hold fast to this fact that the rule of law, especially by the judiciary, is upheld very well in this kind of situations. It's now up to her to balance the expectations of these two, the petitioners and on the other side the government, and to find a compromise that works well. It's not us versus them.
Okay.
There can be a good midline that will be drawn. It's also important to know that this is a freeze. The government can still go back, have the public participation, and this act can still go through.
Okay.
Yes, so it's not do or die. In any case, it's important to be objective about that.
Right. This Finance Act is on top of the agenda by Raila Odinga, who we can see in page 3 of the Daily Nation. The city is abuzz over Raila's Nganya ride, and as Mio leader Raila Odinga is now seen here inside a matatu to Nairobi Central Business District yesterday, and this is just a few days from last week on Friday, where the demonstrations were called countrywide in the day of Sabasaba. The rally held at Kamukunji grounds and then later proceeding all the way to the CBD. The city is abuzz yesterday, seeing that Raila is, interacting with the common mwananchi. You were telling me earlier that Raila Odinga seems to be doing the bottom-up approach better than President William Ruto. What do we make of this, given that he was able to access the CBD actually without so much commotion as we are led to believe happens whenever Raila visits?
Sure. So this is a very interesting. I think we need to really dissect, like a set book. What happens here? Raila's play-by-play. First, he leaves home, Karen, in a matatu. I don't know if you've been there, but that road has actually been recently recarpeted. So it's a very nice, smooth ride. He gets on a matatu. He pays fare for everyone. So he paid fare for everyone. Everyone is traveling free, courtesy of Raila. And that is a very kind of grassroots approach. Think about it. It's not, you're not even kind of skipping over even, I would say, the middle class, and you're really going down to the people who are, the common, all we can call even the most, the common mind. So you're going down from the bottom up, and you are connecting at their level. There's this guy, I don't know if you've seen this image of this guy. Imagine you're in a matatu ride with Raila, but you're picking your phone.
Yeah, there's this guy totally unbothered asking whatever he is on call.
Yeah, so get the nation and look at that meme for today.
Right, what kind of political play do you think is happening here? Is there a message that Raila Odinga is trying to send to President William Ruto, and what can be, what kind of message do you think we can derive from it?
I would argue everything he did is symbolic. Look at the two places he visited. He visited Tom Mboya's statue, and he visited Dedan Kimathi's statue. Let's get a bit into it. Dedan Kimathi was a freedom fighter. You see, his approach to the idea of freedom and liberation and political suppression was more physical and more in the streets. And if you want to mirror that back to Raila, what do we see? There's the mandamano. There's the willingness to really use your hands, use your very being for political liberation. On the flip side, we have Tom Mboya, who was who had a more democratic approach to this. He was very
diplomatic as well.
Exactly, and almost Jomo Kenyatta's right hand man at some point. And you see, he mirrors both of these kind of. He's the neo Tom Mboya. He's the neo Dedan Kimathi. Kind of
like an evolution from Dedan Kimathi to Tom Mboya now to Raila Odinga.
Exactly, and one thing that we say is Raila's position is not earned by votes.
All right.
Yes. So he's a leader.
He calls himself the people's president.
Exactly. Okay. So. Just to finish off, because I've seen so many memes about these people saying, Baba finally amekalia kiti.
All right. Okay. We can get to read that and interpret the final remark by Jesse on page 3, Azimio la Umoja there, with and later addressing, of course, people at the CBD, saying there's no mega mandamano happening tomorrow, which is going to be bigger than it has been before. Is it possible for the government to allow him to access the CBD as he did yesterday without so much commotion? Akuje now a walk from Kamukunji grounds all the way to town. What is the difference between yesterday and a mandamano tomorrow or last week on Friday?
Sure, and I think this is something we discussed with my dad, James Kimotho. His birthday coincidentally is on Sabasaba.
Oh.
And
Happy belated birthday.
And here's the thing, out down the street when I was taking my boda ride back home or on Mandamano Day, I asked the rider, I asked him, and this is what we call qualitative research. So on the ground, this is like an interview. I asked him, what will you do the next Mandamano? The consensus we reach is we'll wait for Raila to tell us. Because in this sense, people will react to whatever he'll do. If you go back, I urge you, dear viewer, go back to the last hour and look at the news panel. Wakidure Kindiki, after he talked on the security issues and the steps that the government was taking to address security, he talked about Mandamano, and he said, the only Mandamano we want is you go out, you see what is going on,
and then you come back.
Yeah, they don't want. So you can see, and I think this kind of is more of a, I would say, political move. It's a more of a political move to kind of maybe press that politically. But I don't think the government is happy, and I think but the other thing that I will say is I believe that this Mandamano will have a bigger audience, will have a bigger participation. Why? Because the other one happened. And Raila has spoken today. Tomorrow is Mandamano.
Right.
Yes.
Those are events which are following each other real quick, and the consequences, of course, and the impact will be felt tomorrow, where we'll be following it up and relaying it back to you as it happens on the ground with our reporters. Part of the things that he'll be doing in this Mandamano is raising that 10 to 15 million signatures towards the impeachment motion of President William Ruto. He's not been in office for a year yet, and calls of impeachment have been there even within the first 4 months from the opposition. Parts of some of those issues that Raila, of course, is putting there as subsections under the cost of living is, since the elections, of course, the reconstitution of the IEBC, as well as the opening of the servers. Of course, the signatures themselves, as the Constitution does not provide signatures as a means of removing a president from office. However, it gives leeway for any member of parliament or for the opposition to bring up a motion using these signatures in parliament and get at least a majority of parliament, I think 2/3 of members of parliament, to support it and push over to the Senate for that impeachment motion. Now, do you feel the government says that this is going to be an exercise in futility, and they've been downplaying as well, as we've seen with Mandamano and as we've seen with what has happened last week on Sabasaba, and we're expecting much more happening tomorrow. Should they still downplay the 10 million signatures? Is it possible for Raila to raise 10 to 15 million signatures, and what can he use this for? Political goodwill, actual impeachment, or just a political move?
Sure. So let's look at some quantitative facts.
Right.
So when you do research design, you look both at qualitative
and quantitative.
Right. So quantitatively, we can say that there are 22.2 million voters in the 2017 election.
Right.
10 million is a percentage shy of half of that. So if for nothing else, this is
a majority.
A near majority.
Yeah,
Raila has kind of always, in the elections, always had that 40.
Yeah, he's always just right there.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if this is symbolic, but 10 million though is enough to send a message, I would say, that almost half of the people who voted, some of them who voted for you, want you out. Now, let's go back to the law. Remember, whenever we're talking about this, we have to be very constitutional.
Let's find ourselves in hot water.
Yeah, in the High Court.
All right.
But how could you even impeach the president? This is done when a legislator that is supported by at least a third of all MPs moves a motion for impeachment on 3 grounds. And these are, what grounds are these? A gross violation of a provision of the Constitution or of any other law, serious reasons for believing that the president has committed a crime under national or international law, or for gross misconduct.
Right.
So we have to validate that Ruto, William Ruto, who is the president, President William Ruto.
Yes,
he's still our president,
yes,
so we must.
President Dr. William Ruto.
Yes. Has committed any of these 3 offenses. and that will be it's a bit of an uphill task, but I think this is like the first step possibly in that direction. I think it is more of a sign than of a threat.
Okay.
For now.
Okay.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
But when you now pointed it out, I got to think around this gross violation of a provision of this constitution or any other law. If the Supreme Court or if Justice Martha Koome finds that there was a violation of the provision of the constitution that is towards the assenting into law of the finance bill, there was unconstitutionalism. In what position would that put the president then? Does that push him a step closer? That gets us out of that for now, and now we say, maybe now really he could be impeached.
Sure, and I think it's important to possibly look at this like in a larger perspective. I don't think that if we are to see impeachment, it should come from the houses. We would probably see a more political version of that. And as it stands, I think in as much as Raila is doing very well on the ground, we can see that him and his allies are possibly losing ground politically. Yes, we've seen Ruto circle kind of growing wider, encroaching even to the.
Would this be why then the government says it's an exercise in futility, knowing Brigadier Gachagua, the deputy president, is quoted yesterday saying, "Hata waki-collect 10 million, watapeleka wapi?" So is it maybe pointing towards that exercise in futility means they are already confident in how their majority in parliament, given that here in the article that you just quoted, the article 145 of the constitution, if this motion is brought in through to parliament, as you said there, at least a third of all members may move the motion for impeachment. They are aware of their majority in these houses. Could that be that feel of confidence coming from?
That's the first step, because after that, what needs to happen is, if the motion is supported by at least 2/3 of all members of the National Assembly, you need a majority. Then the Speaker will relay the information to his Senate counterpart within 2 days, and then within 7 days of getting the National Assembly's resolution, the Senate speakers will convene a meeting of the Senate to hear the charges against the President, and then they need to appoint a committee of 11 senators to investigate the matter. Then they return the matter in 10 days. You can see it's a bit more...
It's a process.
Yeah, but it's actually moving fast as far as legislative processes and constitutional process go. But you can see that it needs to enjoy a majority support. And I think we should also not be too harsh on the president and his government.
Okay.
I think, as it's important even as Kenyans to, as you've seen, Raila is both a democratic and so we are hoping to see, because really we want, as we said earlier, constitutionally speaking, an understanding, not a complete divergence. So let us not preach war. So what I would say is, we will probably see the expected outcome is a political amalgamation, an agreement of both sides that benefits everyone.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe that that's the direction that this, and that's the reason possibly for these signatures. Not a diversion, but a convergence, a political convergence.
Probably the reason why the High Court decided to transmit this to the highest, legal head in the Republic as well, in deliberating with the Finance Act of 2023. So hopefully Chief Justice is also thinking about a way to find a middle ground there that will lead us to, what do you say? A convergence, right?
Yes.
Rather than a divergence. That's the Daily Nation blocked. That's what do you think of the headline?
I think it's a pretty good headline. One word, one man there.
Yeah.
One
act. Very straightforward there. I think we have to commend the Daily Nation for that. There's a cartoon, while we're still at it, by Ndula. I don't know if you can get it up on the screen as well, page 17 of the Daily Nation. It shows 3 very interesting characters who are of key public interest at the moment. Yeah, we have it now on the screen. The Finance Act 2023. We're done with the High Court twice. Now we're knocking at the Supreme Court. This is a very funny one, but I think also apt this morning. as someone who does art, as an artist yourself, any commentary on this?
I think it's very funny. It's very symbolic. We see an Okenye, senator, we see a senator, okay,
right.
Tata, holding William Ruto's hand. And the Finance Act 2023 is there, and he's taking him directly to Justice Mugure.
Taking every door. This is Kwame.
Oh, sorry.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Martha Kwame.
He's just off from Mugure's office, now heading out to Kwame. All right, so you can get to see that. I think it's pretty straightforward, and that wraps our commentary there on the Finance Act 2023. We'll be taking your feedback as well on what you feel will be the direction that will happen at the Supreme Court. Headlines, great show, Sir Richard. Let's get the bug. Francis Maina saying, very energetic show. Good morning, Okenye and Jesse. Watching from Juja. Wabebe Nanganya. That is headlines. Hashtag BIASHARA Tuesday by Sir Richard. Seth Ndirangu. Great interpretation of current affairs by Jesse Kimotho. Great show at KU TV. Thank you very much, Seth Ndirangu, for tuning in. Also, tell us where you are tuning in from. And commendation on Jesse's interpretation of current affairs continues. Let's hear what he has to say about the other issues which are there here on the Daily Nation. There's problem for former President Uhuru Kenyatta. I think let's finish the higher ranks first before we come back to common mwananchi. Let's get to former President Uhuru Kenyatta here on page 5. And it says, partyless, Uhuru's top allies are losing court battle for Jubilee. When I took a look at this headline, Jesse, without reading the details first, it gave me a sense of more trouble for the side of Azimio, given Jubilee is allied to the Azimio side, or is part of the Azimio La Umoja coalition. Former MPs Jeremiah Kioni and David Murathe had already taken a course by presenting this before the courts, and they have lost that court battle after the party registrar declared that he and Murathe were duly removed from the office. I'd love to hear comments from Ojwang Mariam, who is well versed in matters of the Jubilee party. Atuambie what he feels about this. But does this spell doom for the Azimio side, which, as we heard from Raila Odinga saying that part of the issues was part of the, I would call it, vendetta he has against President William Ruto, is that ananunua wabunge wetu, quoting him directly there, and we're seeing that they're losing this to a rival group within Jubilee party, which is somehow tied to President William Ruto.
Great. I want to come back to the word we learned earlier during our session, clientelism. And there are what clientelism is. The dictionary definition is it's a social order which depends on relations of patronage. And in a patriarchy, in a patronage system, the person who gives the support is the patron. So in this case, we are seeing the former patron has lost, his members to another patron who is giving them more, would say more benefits. But you see, politically speaking, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. We need to understand that clientelism, we work on a system on clientelism almost on a daily level. So, it might be, for example, that, it is good to be allied to the president, for example, because then you get a better share of the governmental goodwill to take back to your constituents. So, in politics, I wouldn't say sometimes not an issue of wrong or right. I would say it's an issue of left or right. It's more objective. And what is happening here? We all need to become fast experts in legal jungle. We need to learn and really understand that what due processes are these. And you'll see that the tribunal in this piece here in the Daily Nation, they've gone to great lengths to show exactly what was wrong legally. And it might be that this might be the truth. Number one, you are a victim to clientelism, but as well, it is becoming kind of clear that they did not follow legal process. Yeah, and I think again the courts and these tribunals are a good proving ground for who is wrong or right because they follow the law. Yeah, so
you're not too worried about the Jubilee party. That's what I can read from your remarks there.
Well, I would say this. I feel bad for President Uhuru Kenyatta. I think, seeing now a lot of the infrastructure and, the kind of benefit that he brought to not only his party, but the government, I feel like he's getting a bit of a raw deal. He was, he played the game correctly. He took care of his
people.
Yeah. And I think, it just so happens that he's losing his fast friends, and as we said earlier, this has other ramifications, especially for we know that Raila and Kenyatta are fast friends, so possibly this support would have been extended to Raila, and somehow we see that again. There is a disconnect.
All right. Yeah. Okay. That's you can get to read on the proceedings, of course, on what happened since Mr. Jeremiah Kioni filed the petition to the Political Parties Disputes Tribunal up to the deliberation which was made by that tribunal on some of those acts, including the Fair Administrative Act of 2015 that I'm seeing here, as well as other provisions. As Jesse said there, it's important that when it comes to these matters, we are well versed in matters of what is happening in the legal jungle, if I got your wording correct there. Just like Okia Umtata, who's made himself, of course, aware of what due process are there within the Constitution and within the judicial jurisdictions. Now, what should then President William Ruto, because I think we spoke a lot about the opposition, what Raila Odinga is up to, what High Court is up to, and what Martha Koome, the CJ, might be up to once this hits, the three-judge bench or more. How should President William Ruto position himself now? Now, given Raila Odinga is appealing to a more bottom-up, base than the president, as it seems at the moment. There is Mandamano coming up tomorrow. He's been facing issues with the courts. This Finance Act is actually just the second one of the very many court orders that President William Ruto has been facing the first 10 months that he's been in power. How should he position himself if he wants to have steadfast leadership in the next 4 years?
I think that it is important for him to remind Kenyans why they voted him into power. I think he can do that by, number one, if you are going to ask for money from your people, you should show that it is being put to good use. So you should possibly seek to show that you're giving them back, in terms of development, in terms of, your ministries working. And I think to some degree he's doing that. He is addressing, through his Minister of Security, Kithure Kindiki, you can fact check me on that. We've seen, him trying to address, these main issues that are coming up, to kind of try and stimulate the economy, but he needs to be more prominent in that. How can he do that? Let's talk about it from a very qualitative point of view. Landscape ecology at KU. KU, again, Kenyatta University being a beautiful institution and one of the on the cutting edge of these developments. So he would have, for example, have partnered with the landscape ecologists who are seeking to target issues such as climate change and creating better, more sustainable climatic landscapes. That would have been a good point possibly to touch on and interact with investors. So it's important that he comes out and has a more a much greater kind of media presence. Seen showing that he can connect with the people. I think that I would end my answer there.
Yes. Right. Technocrats, you did point out a bit earlier. You feel like he's failing. Has he balanced it well?
So I think he needs to switch from clientelistic, because right now there are so many claims that you see that because again this is a new government entering to power, then they need time to adjust. But if he's seen becoming a technocracy, which is as I would say a society that is led by technologists and people who are on the cutting edge of technology, it would be better. It would appeal more, is what I'm saying.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. At the back of the At the back of the Daily Nation is where we get IMF, which is now met to meet on Monday next week to approve a 57 billion Kenyan loan. The IMF will also discuss loan requests under resilience and sustainability facility, which is something that you've mentioned there, pointing out to the ecology, climate change. And we've seen the president, while giving addresses outside the Republic, pushing that that goal towards climate action as a republic and contributing to climate action on the international front. And today, a 3-day visit is also starting between the Iranian Rais and the host, that is President William Ruto. We'll receive him for a 3-day tour in which they will discuss, of course, bilateral trade, but the president of Iran is expected to visit Africa in other countries like Uganda and Zimbabwe as well. There's also, for the past, there's information here on the Daily Nation that you can read that for the past 24 years, actually, Kenya has been a very good partner with Iran. Maybe this and much more of some of that that you've been saying will be assured by President William Ruto that is actually delivering his promises to the people, and then can leave the rest of the sideshows to us and the opposition.
Sure, I think this would be, especially looking, as you said, there are very good things happening still in the country.
Right.
And this is a very exciting prospect. Just looking at the numbers, that they are saying that Kenya will export 40 to 50 tons of sheep and meat per day, with an estimated export value of $6 million. That's around almost 100. That's almost 900 million shillings. To Iran, and that can create a very big market, especially for these industries that have been suffering. Again, tied in well with the issue of climate change and climate conservancy, it will really help boost what we call income, so that the people themselves can be stimulated to earn more. Other interesting facts that that are passing through this kind of pipeline, this Iranian Pakistani pipeline, is that 50% of Kenyan exports of tea are to Pakistan, and so we see that these are good partners to have for a lot of the industries that we have supported classically in the past, such as tea, and will cause their growth not across the border.
Right. Read more of what the President Raisi. Anything what do you think of what kind of coincidence this is that Raisi wa Iran anaitwa Raisi?
I think if I was him in Kenya, everyone would be telling. I would be tired probably. I think he's been told that 50 times.
Yeah, he'll be hearing
it's
it.
I think he might like it. It's something that I would be proud of. If your name was President.
Right, Raisi. Yeah. Okay, so that's as much as is happening with that Iranian president, which is a 3-day visit to Kenya. Page 8 is where you read much more, and then the IMF story, which I just highlighted, and is there at the back page. Jesse, one more story of concern, which is in matters of education. I know you are, I don't want to quote you wrongly here, but I know you greatly admire the CBC system. I wanted to say greatly support, but let me say greatly admire if I get your comment. The CBC task force recommended by President William Ruto once he got into power to do, to take a look at, the implementation phase and see if there are reforms that can be implemented or there are some changes that we can do within this CBC curriculum. Here on page 12 of the Daily Nation, there's relief for CBC classrooms, where contractors are now going to do a phase 2 of the project of classrooms, 3,200 classrooms, which are going to be put up in primary schools and also in secondary schools. And these are going to be a total of 1,900 secondary schools across the country in anticipation for grade 7, under that CBC, who are going to be joining the secondary school. However, there are also other recommendations, including there was a rushed implementation of the CBC. Teachers did not receive enough training, and now we are faced with teachers issuing an ultimatum to TSC that 14 days in case they don't revise their salaries, and also that CBA, because of the high cost of living, we're going to have a crisis in education. Who will save us?
Great. Yes. So I again applaud the CBC effort. I think it's a very refreshing breath of air. Let me just give you some quick facts about CBC. For those of us who studied a long time ago, I think it offers a lot of new, refreshing, opportunities for young minds. They study 11 subjects. 11 subjects. I think that's amazing. Right from
all
the start.
examinable.
Yes. And it's very beautiful. They study arts and craft. I, as an artist, I began what I would call my, official study of art and craft in high school when I was almost 16 years old. Can you imagine if I learned when I was 2? I would have been Picasso.
I knew that's
but in my own right, I would say I have my own artistic pride. And shout out to my mother, especially Margaret Kimotho. She really pushed a pencil at me at a young age. And I think it's important, even though the pencil is crooked and broken, that it gets to these young learners.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we have a very, when the population increases, you've always seen the population charts. Where is it widest? It is widest at the bottom.
That's true.
I think as a father myself, and very young, she's an 10-month-old daughter now, Liana. It can be very, when I see this, I'm very happy.
Educational of importance to you, I bet.
About school fees soon. Yeah, I've already started looking for a school. Yes, me and Marcella, we are
teachers will be on strike. Where will you take your kid?
But this is good because why? I think speaking, from an opinion point of view, this is more jobs. More classrooms, more jobs. These classrooms though are being constructed at a cost of 788,000 each. Whether that is good or bad, I've let my friends there at the Ministry of Work to tell me. Yeah. But yes, so it can be. I think this is a good effort.
Right. All right. You've avoided that comment on the notice that has been given by teachers on to TSC. Do you? Who will save us?
The person who will save us is Benjamin Sogomo from page 16 of the Daily Nation opinion piece. And he talks about the plan. He says that the headline here is TSC rushed strategic plan. And he says that the TSC should consider ceding some duties that are not central to its mandate. I think we should focus more on restructuring, a lot of what is happening with the TSC. A lot of these services, for example, have not been, the devolution of them had never been fully done. And, Benjamin here offers a lot of opinion. For example, he says, I think, that the strategic report that was released by the Presidential Working Party of Education Reform, which we've also seen there, was shocking and intriguing. So he really goes in on how we can what is wrong and how we can remedy the situation. So if you really want to get in on that, page 16, Benjamin Sogomo has a hot take.
Right, Benjamin actually also does speak, as you said there, on the restructuring, TSC ceding some of its powers. As you said, devolution happened and some of these services might have been left behind. We see KRA trying to rebrand to a service. We saw the National Police Force also moving to a National Police Service. Whether that's true as well is still up for debate considering the recent events. But also, I think TSC should be taking a leaf there. Finally, Jesse, I know there's so much on these papers, but I have a story that I'd like you to comment on, which is, I think the Gen Z amongst us will enjoy to learn. It's on Healthy Nation Pullout at the middle of the Daily Nation, and it's talking about clickbaits. Children as young as 9 years are being lured into online sex dens to satiate the perverted desires of a global cartel. Inside that, desperate calls for help from some of the victims and unimaginable pain from their parents. Maybe to put it into context first, Jesse, what do you understand clickbaits are? And then we can see what the Daily Nation is telling us as we wrap up.
Yes, so I think the idea is, misleading. Literally misleading is to sell something bad as good. And I think it's very important for us to be vigilant, especially when it comes, to our younger generation. As we said, if you look at that chart, the population chart of most countries, especially for Kenya, it is widest at the bottom. And so even a small leak at the bottom leads to a very big problem at the top. So do read that in the Daily Nation. However, I want to kind of flip this onto a positive light, and my county of the week is Kiambu County. I don't know if you saw, but they have taken very serious actions to address, a lot of the issues that they have with drugs and drug abuse in the county. And you spoke a bit about that earlier. And I think, just to highlight a few of the points that you talked about that I really enjoyed was, number one, the government via, its administrative chiefs, APs, and police. The local government is, number one, cracking down on illicit and illegal and fake, contraband. So, number one, it's taking even measures, what I would say measures to prevent the people who are using from, experiencing some of the worst effects. It's also taking, as we saw them, there was an encouragement for the community to embrace, the people who are already,
affected.
Yes, exactly. And that is, I think, also something that we've seen come out very strongly in this Daily Nation pullout. These are matters that are very close to my heart, and I think for Kiambu County, especially, again, urging users to go back to YouTube, watch that section, do your homework.
True.
Yeah, but it's done really well in ensuring like a decrease in these issues that are facing the youth.
Finally, a positive take still on this clickbait story, since it's mostly on children who are using the internet, and I know, as you mentioned there, as a young father, that children are now using these online spaces for school, recreation, and other connections on a social level. How would you advise maybe we are going into a very increased digital age where access to the internet, online resources is available to even a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old with a smartphone in the house, really. How would you feel is the best way a parent will approach such issues of clickbait and maybe online abuse of children?
I think it's good to possibly cultivate a relationship, what I call a working relationship, where you can kind of at a micro level, talk with your community, your family about this, and share with your children, even your parents. So even for me, there's a big challenge there, but I'm willing to take it up. Yeah, and I think also at a macro level, moderation is something that, possibly, when the internet began, it was meant to be this free space, but we're seeing increasingly the need for moderation. And, they usually say Twitter isn't a real place, and then we ever, it's become very important for us to then self-moderate, but even in these communities and in these spaces to have this kind of moderation. But that said, again, it is important to remain hopeful.
Should we be aggressive? Maybe the government, we know countries such as China and, others who have restricted access to some certain content here and there, or some certain sites here and there. Should we go to that, extreme, as C.S. Kindiki calls the opposition, political extreme? Should we go to that kind of social extreme and ensure that we are just blocking off this, maybe for our younger generations?
No, I don't think so, because I think the internet is, very amazing. I think what we can do is this, because I work in the digital space, and I work remotely.
You're fully remote worker.
Yes, for my team at Actual Food, I promised I will shut them out, but my boss, Joao, is Portuguese. Victor is Kenyan, he's a doctor. Bradley is in Singapore. Kaylee is in the United States, and my good friend and my CEO, Greg Greenberg, is in the US, and Tana Friedberg is in the US too. So we want to get our youth to that level where they can be competitive on the global scale. How do you do this? You empower them. You show them how to code. You show them how to design. You give them pencils at a young age. And that way, when they learn to have this part, how to use it, they will not use it badly. Yes, they will not. So we teach them at a young age. So we use positive reinforcement. Thank you.
Positive reinforcement. That's a very good comment there. And positively, maybe just to end on a positive note, at the back of the Daily Nation, new business listings have spiked as 9,000 firms close in 5 years. New business listings are spiking in the Republic. Maybe this is what the government wanted us to do, to start business on our own. The times are tough, no job opportunities. Read much more of it at the back of the Daily Nation. Very good report there by Bran Ambani on the number of companies that are now dissolving. It is quite low compared to the number of companies that we are registering every year. So young people take up this opportunity, and the more we register, the more business, there's ease of doing business, and the government might provide policies that are going to be favorable towards the setting up of businesses by young people. Jesse, anything that I might have left, this is your time to do it.
Yes. Just following up, segueing, from what you said, the DN2 powering SMEs. It talks very well, especially about how if you're a young lady, how you can venture, or a man. I mean, you can venture into the eyelash business, and I know eyelashes. I'm a dear friend of mine. Yeah, she gets eyelashes at 100 bob, and they look very nice when you put them on. So you can with as little as 100 bob, you
can buy an eyelash and use it.
Or sell it to your friends. Tell them you can enter into the eyelash business. So I think it's important even for young people, for young people such as my younger cousin Olaf. He's just 18 years old, but it's important for him to learn how to survive. And I think the DN2 has very good advice for people like him,
right,
to venture into.
If there's anything to tell you, we need to learn how to survive, is still at the front of the Daily Nation, the Finance Act, the cost of living, which is slightly, affecting, slightly or majorly affecting almost every single Kenya. Slight relief as well. This July, power prices are expected to drop. As we point towards EPRA implementing the fuel levy, we also have to say thank you so much on this other side. Electricity might be cheaper in July. You can check that story on page 12. Consumers have been handed a slight relief after the energy regulator reduced the electricity prices for July by 3.5%, translating to lower power bills this month. So some of those charges there, forex and other levies which have been put by EPRA will be reduced. So expect your tokens to be a bit cheaper. There's actually a percentage there, Jesse. I don't know if you've gotten it so that you can wrap up with it. On page 25 there.
Yeah, they say it's 3.5%. Usually 100 bob gets you 3.86 units. So as a Kenyan, I want to just quickly do the math.
Do that math live on air here.
Yeah.
They're saying though for others who have been paying 28 Kenyan shillings per kilowatt hour, the electricity, they'll now be paying 27 per unit this month of July. I expect for a large scale operation, this is going to be very favorable for them. The math, what does it bring?
We will get 3.7249 instead of 3.86. It's okay. That is that's lights for one more day for every 100 days 3.
That's 0.2 token.
I'll take it. And for petrol, especially with the EPRA, that's a 13 bob decrease at the pump.
Yes.
So it'll be a huge relief. It'll be a really big relief even for that moment. So if you have a car now, is the time to fuel it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jesse, for having this discussion with us.
My pleasure, Richard, Ryan, and the rest of the team.
Right.
Cheers.
All right. Any final remark on the state of the nation and any shout out that you want to give? This is your floor.
Sure. I think I subtly shouted out everyone. I don't have any more people to shout out. But I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in to BIASHARA Tuesday and the newspaper review. I'd like to thank everyone at home and my family and friends. Daniel, who recently got married. Cheers.
That's it. All right, here feedback I see from Mary Christine. This guy, Jesse, is very sharp, very eloquent, and well versed in knowledge. Money has been poured, Jesse. This is good work. This is good work, yeah. And good articulation as well from Joy Alana, who's watching, and we are very grateful that they could be able to create time this morning on BIASHARA Tuesday and the newspaper review section with Jesse Kimotho, a political scientist and an artist and an all-round amazing human being, self-proclaimed Picasso.